Welcome to the GOTO podcast. Each episode covers the brightest and boldest ideas from the world's leading experts in software development. Tune in for practical lessons, compelling theories, and plenty of inspiration. GOTO gathers the brightest minds in the software community to help developers tackle projects today, plan for tomorrow, and create a better future. Stay up to date with the latest in tech through GOTO's top-rated events in cities like Amsterdam, London, Copenhagen, and Chicago, and by subscribing to the GOTO Conference's YouTube channel, where you can find thousands more high-quality dev talks. Learn more at gotopia.tech.
I'm so excited that y'all are still here. This is one of my favorite parts of the day when we do the panel, because this is off the cuff. This is not scripted. We did not write out answers for them. And they don't, what's funner is they don't know what's coming at them. So that's always fun. So I want to introduce, as you know, we have Nick Coult down here, right, from AWS. We have Robbie Kohler from Taco Bell. I know it's not Taco Bell, but that's what I say. From Yum. All right. So yeah. From David, we have David Anderson, GP. We have Janak, Agarwal from AWS. And we have Akshatha, Laxmi. And then we have Jeevan, Dongre, who's going to be actually moderating. And Akshatha, she took a last-minute invite up here. So give her a round of applause. So we had someone that had to drop out for some travel stuff. So she doesn't know what's coming either, but we're going to let them talk, and then you might ask some questions in the audience, right? So, all right, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So thank you so much. Before we continue, right, if you want, you can take a picture of this panel. This is the most vibrant, amazing panel I have ever got to moderate. Thank you, all of you. So Nick, the first question is to you. As a director, do you use AI agents to write code? To keep it simple, do you dog feed, puppy feed?
Do I use AI tools? Yes, on a daily basis. I use AI. And I use it for a couple of reasons. One, because I want to keep exploring what the capabilities are, because I want to understand for myself what are the limitations, what are the strengths, and I want to see how it's evolving. And the best way for me to do that is hands-on with AI myself. And I also encourage my team to do the same. I'm also using it because it genuinely makes me more productive, and it makes my team more productive. I do think you have to use it for the right things. It's not a catch-all that can just do everything for you, but it's an accelerant. I think that's where AI is today, is that it's an accelerant. It's not a replacement for the human mind, but it can automate and accelerate things that otherwise would be manual. Like now, if I want to try an idea out, I actually just ask, Cursor or Kiro to write some code, and I can have a prototype up and running in 15 minutes. Whereas before AI, I wouldn't have done that. Even though I have the technical capability to do it, I don't have the time to go spend a day or two creating a prototype. But if I can do it in 15 minutes and I can show that prototype to somebody and say, here's an idea of how I think we could do this, that's really useful. And that's not just acceleration. That's actually doing something that I wouldn't have done before because I just didn't have the time to do it. So I do think it's starting to get to the place where it is changing not just how quickly people work, but it's changing how they work. But it's still early. Now, I think if you look across Amazon, you probably see similar things. There are engineers, product managers, scientists who are using AI for similar things to what I'm using it for. But I think that most of the benefit is actually still to come.
Is there any features that's been kind of built using AI, like part AI, part human, or it is still very human intense?
I would say the human is still driving the bus. But I mean, we had a senior principal engineer who wrote a prototype of something in Rust, like at night at home on his laptop, just kind of fooling around, and he had something written in a couple hours that would have taken weeks and weeks of effort before. So it's a human. Like, he was deciding what to build, what the architecture should be, but the AI was filling in all the boilerplate for him so that he could focus on that 10% of the code that was the hard part. Is an AI completely writing things from scratch with no human oversight? No, and we're very far from that. But is it accelerating things for people? Absolutely it is.
Since I asked this question from the curiosity of, we have always been the consumer of AWS services, and very rarely we get some insights about how each service is kind of engineered, architected, designed, and stuff like that. So when you come up with a service or probably a new feature to an existing service, I'm very sure the system design, the architecture, and the implementation are the three key pillars that you actually kind of worry about as a director. So how do you, how AI is actually helping with these three pillars, like the system design, the architecture, and the implementation? How does it fits in between?
I think right now you see it mostly helping on implementation. And this is probably different for, like, the way that we do it is not necessarily how one of our customers would. AWS, it's hard to say this. The scale is really hard to comprehend, that there are over 10 trillion function invocations per month. So we have to worry about things in system design that almost no one else has to worry about, right? That's a good thing, that you don't have to worry about how to handle 10 trillion function invocations per month. I don't want you to worry about that, because that should be our problem. But that scale of problem is at the level where, it has to be right. And you can't afford a lot of mistakes in that type of system. And so the way that we approach it is, availability first, security first, right? And so, the LLMs aren't really trained on understanding systems at that scale. They're trained on things that are on GitHub, right? And you don't find Amazon scale systems on GitHub. So I think where we see a lot of value in it is in the implementation and kind of the boilerplate implementation, when you're writing the code and there's like pretty standard patterns that show up in a lot of code, even in our code. And the LLMs are really good in filling in those standard patterns. But I don't know that I would trust an LLM today to design an Amazon Lambda scale system.
Yeah, very interesting take. I'll come back to you with much more very specific questions. So my next question is to Janak. So as a product manager, you deal with a lot of requests from sales and business and stuff, and how your life has changed now. And are you still writing just PRDs or building prototypes, or you are doing much more than that? And how your life has changed as a product manager? I'm sure we will have some product managers in the crowd. So from your perspective, because as Nick rightly mentioned, you have to think a lot about the things that we don't get to think about, right? It comes very obvious to us. So how do you manage to do this, and where does the LLMs come into light in your life?
Can you hear me? So in the photo there, I see a full head of hair, and now it's quite minimal. The rate of fall was, high before. With AI, I hope to keep some hair, for longer. Now, all of that, to say that life has been simple, but also hard, and it's a forcing function, and you have to learn how to use these tools, because there's an army of sales folks, army of customers who are using the service. And let's say even if 10% of them are conversant or well-versed in AI, and if you are not, the amount of requests you're getting because they are more productive is increasing, by 10x, 100x. And if you don't find a way to keep up, then you're going to drown. because you still have only 24 hours in the day, even if you ruin your work-life balance. So you have to find a way to keep up there. And that forcing function helps you to also freshen up your skills, find ways to make the team more productive, make the customer happy, make the field folks happy, and at least, the rate of closure of tickets, rate of closure of issues, or the discussions that you do have to increase. And at the same time, the recall value also has to increase. Because customers still realize, hey, you spoke to them 3 months back about some issue and you promised them a feature and it's not there, what do you do? Because they have AI. They're going to say like, hey, what did I discuss 3 months back with Lambda? So, the productivity increase has to happen across the stack, regardless of PMs or engineers or roles, whatever role you have. That is just table stakes.
So if you look at the panel today, right? Janak writes PRDs and Nix kind of drives to the implementation from the engineer perspective. And both David and Robert from the technical leadership gets to drive the architecture and gets to drive the execution. But the end of the day, it comes to Akshatha to write the code. So that's the mix that we have thought about, right? So I want to ask the question to David, especially, I understand where you stand today. At one side, you have to be updated with the Lambda releases so that you can write better architecture, suggest better architecture. At the same time, the innovation in LLMs and AI is happening at the speed of light. How are you catching up these two developments as an architect and making sure you are incorporating the greatest and the latest and the best architecture and system design so that your team can go ahead and build it confidently? How is your day looks like, and how does it has changed with LLMs and GenAI coming into the play?
Great question. I think one thing I've learned kind of through the years, and with GP, we've been very deliberate. We have what I would call a very modern infrastructure design. So we purposely follow all the AWS best practices from white papers. So we have a multi-account strategy. So we're very clear that the AWS recommendation is our standard. So that means that if a new feature comes out, we can be very aligned to that. For example, we use Control Tower to create new accounts. So we have a lot of really good solid. And one of my peers, Robert Bracewell, ensures that we have a very high standard from our infrastructure. So that means when we're using Lambda in that infrastructure and multi-accounts, that we're trying to use as much off-the-shelf features and capability as possible. So it's the thing about having no undifferentiated heavy lifting. We don't want any operational overhead, so we push that to AWS. So we're very purposeful about that. So we also have a very, what I would say, modularized architecture, which is standardized. So with those two things, with an architecture well described and an infrastructure well specified by AWS, there's lots of documentation of both those things. So that gives us two advantages. One, when a new feature comes out from Lambda or EventBridge or Step Function, we can very quickly try that because we have standardized infrastructure and architecture. Two, when we're using GenAI, we have the context of our system is very well documented, so we can then use that to create further artifacts. So I think that's something that's really interesting. With how we use AI, I think there's part of using AI to generate something like Toil, just quickly generate something because I'm too lazy to do it. But there's a second, which is the Socratic method, which is I have a domain, tell me how it should work. Asking questions of your system. So I think that's very interesting that you can even see the AWS from infrastructure, like even things like Trusted Advisor, tell me what problems there are, tell me how to fix them. So the idea that you can actually inquire of your system is starting to get interesting as opposed to digging through and finding defaults. So I think there's a real partnership between the standard infrastructure kind of, abstracted away by AWS and then a standard architecture that we're very strict about.
So my next question is to you, Robbie. So I know you are a part architect, part developer, and also you have a lot of people management to deal with. So how does you strike a balance between these three? And you have seen and experienced the non-agentic era as well, and now there is a lot of agents coming into the play. And how does your life has changed as a VP, as a technology leader, before and after AI, and how does the productivity increase, or how does it impact it in a productivity increase?
Yeah. To the first part of the question, how do I balance between the different roles? I mean, I'm an engineer, right? That's how I started, so I love that. But I was kicked out of the code base on that product we talked about because I was too in the weeds, and I realized this wasn't the best use of my time. I also messed something up that I shouldn't have. So at Taco Bell, when I was there, and I was like one of the first engineers, I was super hands-on, even as I moved up the ranks of management to director, because to do serverless right, I mean, there's a certain skill that you have to build. So I was training a lot. I was getting everyone on board, and I ended up being really hands-on. Less of that today as we built out more people capable of doing that. And maybe with Gen AI, they can actually like learn on their own better. There's like a study mode in ChatGPT where you can be like, teach me serverless. Maybe I don't have to be as hands-on with that. I miss it. I still stay close with it. And what's nice about Gen AI is I can kind of like point it to a code base or like a PR and explain it to me like what's going on. I feel like I'm still connected with what's being built. Without spending too much time, because it does take time to go through a large like PR and things like that. So I love that about Gen AI. Languages I don't know, like Rust or Go, like being able to like have it explain what that is, that helps me actually scale better when some of my teams are doing stuff in Go or Rust. I don't know those languages very well, so it's been great for that. So I think it's been helping me actually stay out of the code, but still connected and still feel like I have a sense of like the technical direction, and I can set more of that high level strategy aligning with the business, but still being comfortable with what's being built.
So you being on the ground, of course, they are all leaders, creators, consumers, and you are the adopters, like implementation. You have been writing code before pre AI stuff, and you started your career on serverless, right? More or less. How does your day look like, pre and post, and how does that transformation happen? Was it a switch of a button, or it's a gradual adoption? And just throw some light about your experiences. I think a lot of people in the crowd probably relate to the ground adoption part of it. Yeah.
When I started my career, I was already into serverless. So I guess everybody who's on the panel would find that very surprising, because they come from the background of like virtual machines and then containers and then now to serverless.
Basically, she's telling we are all old.
No. It's just you guys have so much experience with the patterns and system design that I've never had to go through. But getting into serverless really like didn't put me through the problems of, provisioning things and seeing if this machine will be enough for my workload or not. Like, because of Lambda, thanks to Janak and Nick, we are able to like scale infinitely, don't have to worry if my server is going down or whatnot. So I've never had to have the nightmare like, oh, is my function like not running? Are users like suffering, like you have mentioned? So, and also like you asked about pre-AI, how was my like coding cycle, if you would call that. It would be that I get the requirements from clients. They ask for certain business requirements, and maybe they have architect on their side. If not, we have an architect on our side who designs the whole system, and then we decide on the features we're developing, and we spend like the first week or a week and a half to scaffold the whole application. We need to set up the whole testing process and all the infrastructure that we need. So now with AI, I think that part of the cycle has shortened significantly because of Kiro and also Claude. We are able to scaffold a lot of our code from our existing examples. So it can still maintain the styles and best practices that our organization sticks to, or the general best practices that are there for coding and infrastructure in terms of security. So you don't really have to be worried that is AI doing something out of the ordinary. So if you yourself know what you want out of the AI, you can get the best results out of it. So starting from not knowing what I want from AI to now being there, it has significantly shortened the scaffolding time for me. And also the one more factor that I noticed when I started using AI is like I develop a feature and I give it the requirements that I've done this, and I say that this is my input, this is the output. Can you tell me in some of the edge cases? And a couple of the times it has come up with a few edge cases that I never thought about. So it's helping me cover things that I might not have done on my own. So like 2 years ago, I was probably writing test cases that were not fully testing it, but the coverage is saying, oh, 100% you've covered it. But now AI is actually covering it that 100%. So yeah, that's been my experience with AI so far.
So another thing in the panel, I know Robbie and David went through a lot of modernization, especially David. He's been one of the key stakeholder to drive modernization. So with serverless first at Liberty Mutual, and of course Robbie with serverless first at Taco Bell and then M. I'm just curious because today even I presented and spoke about modernization. There were other talks by Sharad Bharadwaj about modernization. And also modernization has been one of the center and the front topics now. Even AWS is kind of trying to ride on that. I'm just curious, does AWS services go through modernization? And if so, how does that work? I would like to hear both from Janak and Nick, the product and the engineering. I'm very sure product is much feature focused, but Nick would be, I got to get rid of this technical debt. How do I do it? I don't have bandwidth. I'm just assuming, maybe it may be wrong. Maybe probably you can correct me. So how does that happen? I'm very sure if you look back, you must, you can think like, okay, I must have done certain things certain way, probably calling it as modernization. So how does that work?
Well, one thing you probably noticed about AWS is that we don't like to introduce backwards incompatible changes. I don't want to say we never deprecate things because we do, but we don't like to, right? We want to give a commitment to our customers that if we ship something, it's going to work and you're going to be able to use it. And it's not going to disappear tomorrow because we changed our minds, right? And that means that when we ship something, it has to stay up and running, like for all practical purposes forever. Like not actually forever, but it might as well be, right? And so if you're going to build something and then modernize it, meaning refactor it, you have to do that in such a way that the end user does not notice that you did that. And that is not easy to do, especially when you're operating at the scale that we're operating at. There are AWS services that have done that. There are AWS services that have done whole-scale rewrites of back-end systems. I'm familiar with one example. I used to be GM of ECR, and there were which is the container registry. So I led the engineering team for that product, and there was some critical back-end systems that we knew were not going to reach the scale that that service was going to get to. So they rewrote the whole thing, but it took 5 years. Not a quick project. Because you think about a service like ECR, every time you launch a container on AWS, you're probably using ECR. So it has to be up and performing with no blips. Everyone notices right away if there's a blip. So, I would say modernization in the sense that we mean it for our customers is probably not something that you see happen with an AWS service. Refactoring does happen sometimes, but it's not as common as you would think. Sometimes what you see is effectively replacing one service with another. Like we launched something that's just so different than what we had before that we created a whole new service, right? And that new service is implemented in a different way than the old one was. That's more common than modernizing and refactoring something while keeping it running.
Janak,
just to be clear, like the way we do things and the way our customers do things is not the same, and that's kind of the point. Like we do things so that you don't have to.
You're dealing with the one-way door decisions so we don't have to, right?
Yeah.
So probably it's a debate between. I'll come to Janak after this. Probably it's a debate between Robbie, David, and Nick in terms of how AWS does certain things so that customer should not be worrying about stuff. I think Nick and Janak, you drive a lot of things. Probably it's like a simulation, right? You exactly know what customer would do and certain things you don't want customers to do. So you build accordingly. So you kind of simulate the customer behavior in a way, right? So how do you manage to write PRDs for this?
It's about spending time with the customer. It's a very common science that to be better at something, it takes a certain amount of time. And there's no shortcut to it. And if you're starting to learn a new skill, for example, it takes X hours to become, from beginner to intermediate and then to advanced and so on. It's the same skill. So here you're learning to interpret what the customer is doing and why they're doing and what they're doing. And then you are able to figure out, how to make that life easy. And you don't always get it right. It's an iterative process. But the hope is with experience or with time, you develop that skill, good enough that you're able to get more right than not. And that is one of the leadership principles, I write a lot. It prevents a lot of refactor and modernization for, Nick and some of the folks. So that's where the feedback comes in. That's where the mechanisms that we have, from here. We had some great discussions with folks, discovered how they're doing what they're doing. Now the idea is to take it back, figure out how to make it easy. And then in the process of all this, new workload types emerge. And when new workload types emerge, you have to start the process all over again. So developer experience is at the core of serverless. Someone has to think about it. And, if you're changing the way you're writing your code, it had better be easy. Otherwise, why will you change, right? So we try to think about it, and over a period of time, the way at Amazon we've been trained, there's always a training process. We call it the working backwards process. It takes a lot of time to learn. It takes a lot of time to execute on it, but it saves a bunch of time in the future. That's how we do it.
So my next question is to David. So you have modernized Liberty Mutual to a very large extent with serverless first. Now with serverless first and GenAI, if you have to go back, can you think about what are the things that you could have done better, faster, much reliable? Because you have completed one journey in a very traditional. You have done modernization in a very traditional way. Now we have GenAI, which is a modern way of modernizing, modernization. If you have to go back and do something, what would have been those things?
So a hard question. First of all, the last question. One thing about AWS is you guys follow cloud principles. You're well architected. You're customer-centric. Going pretty well. So not much modernization needs to happen. One of the big things about modernization is making sure the engineers understand what this new thing looks like. So I think with Gen AI, Shilpa gave a great talk earlier on about really good process and documenting standards and using well architected. I think the ability to scale those good practices among teams would have been easier with Gen AI, with an LLM to help you learn, as Robbie was saying. So being able to kind of learn faster with AI would have been really helpful. I think the ability to quickly prototype and build things would have been really helpful to help people understand. And because we would often do like dojos where we would build something in serverless, but we have to maybe plan for one like next quarter and have one day, and we would have maybe a hackathon every year. You can do a perpetual hackathon now. You can build really quickly. So I think the groundswell and the momentum of people understanding the new technology and trying it could have been much faster. And then I think as we were building systems, we definitely could have, I don't want to say we could have built faster, but I think we could have avoided problems if we were using Gen AI to help us as we build, because we probably could have been more robust in how we thought about systems and maybe how we tested. So I think it would have, again, I don't want to say faster, but I think we could have definitely executed with higher quality with Gen AI, if that makes sense.
So Robbie, from your perspective, what are the gaps that you see today in terms of the scalability of the business and the feature parity, either from the serverless perspective or the AI perspective, which could have kind of filled in and made your life more easy? Like what gaps do you still feel it could have been better? Like every day you experience, like I wish I had this.
From an AWS perspective?
Yeah, AWS, engineering operations, delivering business value, whatever.
Lambda is amazing, so I don't really want to say anything bad about it, just sitting next to it.
Yeah.
I feel like they're really good at working on the things that aren't that great. And like they can almost read my mind, it feels like at times. Like for step functions for a while, I felt they were missing. I was talking to Eric about it, like the variables and the JSON data. And I don't know if I told them that. I might have, but they do listen. Like I'm like, it would be really cool if you did this. And they take it seriously, which is amazing because they're like a huge company. Why would they, but they're so customer obsessed, and it's really true. And so like step function is a great example. When I first started using it in 2018, I was just like, it was still cool and I used it, but there was a lot of gaps I saw. I can be honest. I think they'd be honest about it too. And just to see where that service is, what it's like today and the growth. And it's an amazing service, right? So I feel like I love how they just keep evolving and listening to the customer. And so like, I can't really think of any huge gaps. I feel like with what they have, we can figure things out with the composing of the primitives. Even before event bridge schedules or like event bridge, we did it a certain way and it would work. But then they eventually come out with something that's just like amazing, and then we use it and adopt it. So far it's been I've been very happy customer with AWS.
My next question is to you, Akshatha. I'm very keen to understand your views, your perspectives about how the future is going to look like. Because I'm sure a lot of people in the crowd are kind of more or less young developers who are excited about AI. At the same time, they are scared. And where do you see this going? And since you don't carry a lot of baggage of data center, baggage of virtual machines and stuff, you kind of started your career on serverless, as I said. how do you see, what's your perspective from the future, like how this can drive and how it can add value? Because one of the key value that AWS also provides or delivers to the customer is developer experience. So probably, I mean, hearing from, basically you're a customer for Janak, like more or less, he would love to hear your perspective in terms of how do you see the future from your eyes, from your perspective?
Yeah, so there's one philosophy that I strongly resonate with. It's that AI is as good as the person who's using the AI. So if you are clear about what you want and you know your concepts really well, then you can use AI to really maximize your output as well. So I believe that there's not really any reason to be afraid of this AI wave, because if you are willing to learn and utilize this great potential that's there in AI, then you will go really far. And from what I have seen, we are working with few clients who are embracing AI openly, and they have had legacy code base that they wanted to modernize into more modern tech. And to do this, we have been using AI consistently. And another advantage that this has provided to us is that I am a TypeScript or Python expert, but I'm not a Go or Java expert. But this client has been using Go and Java, but I don't have to learn the language, because as long as I can tell AI what to do and make sure that it is following their existing code patterns, it is doing a great job, because they have a great code base. They just want to modernize it. So in these kind of cases, using AI really makes you go much faster than you would have otherwise. And so in terms of the future of AI, I believe there is a lot to do. I'm only talking in terms of code experience, developer experience. And I have used multiple LLMs and like code editors that help you integrate with Gen AI, and they've all been great. And AWS is also doing a lot to get the users to accept and ride along the Gen AI wave. I have used Kiro, like somehow I got the access to it. It's really difficult to get the access, but I've used it and I liked it a lot. It's a completely new experience to develop applications, and I do think AWS is listening and understanding what you need, what they need to, stay relevant in this case. So yeah, I think every company at this point needs to be going in that direction, because this is the developer experience. Now, when it comes into business, you will find more and more use cases to pull in AI to make sure that your workflows are smoother than they have been before. So this is my opinion so far.
Thank you so much. We have 4 minutes left, but I encourage audience if they want to ask any questions, because it's very hard to get this kind of panelists, especially from various backgrounds and experiences. I would like to keep the forum often open if you have any questions.
Hi. So my questions mostly to Nick, but others are okay to answer as well. So you said that you built something which would have taken months or weeks in a day, right? Overnight. And that's largely been my experience as well with AI. But one thing I've noticed is, like, since I started using these tools, I used to memorize code and it used to be in the tip of my fingers. And that is entirely gone, because you mentioned that you had the technical capability and you still went ahead and used it, which is fine. But I feel like, won't that affect future generations because we won't know to write code on our own? Isn't that one of the trade-offs?
It's certainly true that the human mind, the brain, is very lazy. At least mine is. If you don't use a skill, then it will start to atrophy, right? And I think coding in particular is a skill that you kind of have to do. And if you don't do it, you get rusty pretty quickly. On the other hand, the things that LLMs are best at when it comes to code, I think are the sort of, I use the term boilerplate. It's the things that are fairly straightforward. It's probably not worth a human spending a bunch of time on those things anyway, right? And I don't think it's the case that LLMs remove the need completely for you to read and write and understand code. And in some cases, they can actually help you learn it better. I think where the bigger question comes in my mind is if we believe that the boilerplate is going to be automated, right? And the emphasis is going to be on sort of higher level architecture, higher level thinking in code. How do you get someone to go from being a junior engineer to being someone who can do that stuff if they're not like, you see what I'm saying? There's a sort of career progression that has to happen, and the LLMs might disrupt that career progression. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that question right now. It's a good question. I don't want to claim that I don't.
So I have younger people who are friends who are getting into coding, and right now they are more of prompt engineers. They don't really know the technicals.
Yeah.
And this is one of the issues which I've been seeing. So that's why this question was for. I think you know better because you code, right? You've been using LLMs for quite a while.
Yeah. So I also have the same opinion as you. So I don't think that people who are just getting into the software industry should really be so dependent on Gen AI, because if there is something that goes wrong, they won't be able to fix it. AI can't fix it and they can't fix it because they don't know what AI generated. So at the end of the day, even if you are using AI, you might not be a junior. A human has to still review the code. I think that part of it should never be taken completely out of the loop from a human. There can be some comments that the AI can come up with because there's a lot of documentation on what are the best coding standards. And if you're using the wrong casing for a variable name, it can just tell that you should fix this. But real business logic bugs that might have generated, or some algorithm that AI thought is a good idea to use, but it's just big O of n cube and is completely like slow, you can find it if you know the concepts well. So at the end of the day, I would still say, make sure you know the concepts and then use AI and review what AI does. Don't be so dependent on AI that you have no idea what's going on. Make sure that you know how to fix it at the end of the day if something goes wrong.
Basically, what she is saying is they can't fire an AI, but they can definitely fire a human. Don't be that human, right?
My question is to Janak. There's this popular Henry Ford quote where he goes, if I asked my customer what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And because they don't know what car looks like at that point, right? So how do you take customer feedback? Because there's going to be a lot of asks, and how do you figure out which ones are the good ones to pick, which ones are not the good ones to pick? How do you decide? Especially at the AWS scale, I'm sure there's so much noise in customer feedback. How do you kind of pick those right things to build next?
I think you triangulate it with the strategy of the business. So at the end of the day, this is a business. You're not doing charity work here. And the way to build a good business, sustainable business, is to listen to customer feedback. That is number one. But there's again a science study that says that there's 7.5 billion people on the earth, but the degree of separation is 6. And then you have k-means clustering, which proves that there's very specific patterns or generalizations that you can put people into. And these are the same people who give feature requests. So the feature requests also form very cleanly into specific buckets. And then you try to figure out, okay, this is the bucket I want to holistically solve. because let's say the customer has 4 requests, to unblock them, you resolve only one, they're not going to be able to bring their workload. It's not going to be. You really want to complete an arc and then move on to the next. In that sense, you pick like a circle or some circles, depending on the size of the team that you want to prioritize. You figure out, where those clusters are, and you try to fix all of them at the same time to complete the story or complete that arc, and then move on to the next. It's easy.
So I have 2 questions, and it's mainly for Nick and Robbie, but I welcome the rest of the panel to answer. First question is, I think having worked on a couple of greenfield projects and startups, so where we used Gen AI extensively, one of the biggest issues I've personally noticed is code hallucinations, where you assume that the agent is doing what you think that it's supposed to actually do, but then it doesn't do it. And I believe that for this new era, observability, they will become one of the most important. Is actually there any plans from AWS or actually any of your partners to basically build better observability tools for these autonomous agents and these generative AIs? Question number 1.
Yes.
Can't say more than that, but yes.
Yeah, maybe some examples or maybe
there's aspects of observability that for the agentic, the glorious future of agentic AI that are no different than observability for any other software, right? Like, how is it performing? How is it scaling? What's the error rate? What's the latency? Those are all kind of standard observability things. Troubleshooting, logging, scaling, cost. There are aspects of agentic AI that are unique, like tokens and the token usage and the token budget. Like, tokens are a finite capacity because ultimately token processing out of an LLM is backed by GPUs, and the GPUs have limited capacity. And so that's perhaps something that's a little bit unique to the agentic world. Also, the fact that agents, as I said in my talk and others talked about, are non-deterministic. And so you probably need to be able to observe some things about what they're doing. Because of the fact that they're non-deterministic, you don't always know the order in which things are going to happen. You're going to want to be able to have some signals that tell you how they're performing and what are the corner cases that they're hitting that no one thought of. But my personal opinion is probably 90% of the observability story overlaps with what you would do for containers and serverless for observability. It's not going to be fundamentally different.
Then my second question, I think generative AI in terms of programming approach, where you get the autonomous agents to change code, throw code, that approach could work in the industries like consumer products, e-commerce industries, but in legacy industries like, let's say, military or transportation, where people's lives might be involved, those approaches may be a bit more risky. Is actually there any thoughts about this from your side about what AWS would actually do to make it safer?
That's a great question. So we actually shipped something. We went GA, and I don't remember the exact name of what it's called, but it's effectively guardrails. It's a special form of guardrails for Bedrock. So we just went GA with this capability that leverages automated reasoning to check the correctness of LLMs. You might think, well, isn't an LLM already doing automated reasoning? It's not. Automated reasoning is a particular type of computational logic. And so what an automated reasoning system does is it can verify whether a given computation results in the correct thing or not. And what we shipped is the ability to do that for LLM results. And so this is the type of capability that's going to become essential in safety critical and regulated environments, where in an aviation system, if you have a bug, you could result in fatalities, right? Like you can't afford those kind of mistakes. So you have to be able to ensure that the system performs correctly. And today that's done by humans writing code and doing computational logic verification. It's very expensive and slow. That's why a lot of those safety critical systems tend to be multiple generations behind a modern system. I think that's going to change with LLMs, where you'll be able to actually use the latest AI technology, but also verify that the results are correct and that the system is doing what it's supposed to do. But what I just said is very cutting edge, and there's still a lot of work to do to get to the point where I think you could have, an aviation or safety critical system be using an LLM in the loop operationally.
Okay. Well, we are out of time, and I have a couple things I want to tell you. First of all, I want to say thank you to the panel. Y'all did awesome. It's really good to hear your expertise.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the GoTo Podcast. Head over to gotopia.tech to discover lots more content from the brightest minds in software development.